Welcome back. Today we're confronting a subject that is just as disturbing as it is urgent, and every parent needs to know.
So they will go to such extremes as self-harm, mutilation, harming their pets. These Gore Groups are part of what we call nihilistic violent extremists.
The rise of online groups luring kids to commit violent and sadistic acts.
They want to institute chaos and they want violence in society as we know it. The online chatting platforms, Discord and Telegram, are being utilized.
Minecraft, Fortnite, Roblox.
Those perpetrators are trying to push the victims to eventually take their own life live stream. A very deranged thought process.
This is Deep Dive with Sarah-Forgany. Jonathan Garman with the FBI, thanks so much for coming and being here with us today.
Yes, thank you, Sarah.
You have little kids, and when you said that you would come and talk about this today, are you worried for your kids' safety?
Oh, absolutely. This is something that I personally have had a conversation with my eldest about, because I wanted to make sure that he was aware that there are these types of things happening out there, and it's awful because we want everybody to know that these horrific things are going on. And the second you say to yourself, not my kid's not going to be doing something like that, you're almost pulling the wool over your own eyes in that case.
And that's when it happens.
Unfortunately.
So we're talking about what I've read about called Gore Groups. It sounds scary. And what is it? Can you explain it to people who've never heard of it in plain terms?
It is extremely scary. These perpetrators are, again, using these gaming platforms to pull these children into their private servers on other platforms. And they are basically coercing them into conducting acts of self-harm or harming their pets or harming other individuals. This specific threat, this nihilistic violent extremist, this area that is relatively new in the grand scheme of things, it's only a few years old, but it is to the point where, as an organization, the decision was made well above me that this was very, very important. And this was something that we needed to have a focus on.
Is this all you investigate, just these sort of groups, or do you investigate other cases as well?
Well, so as an organization, we don't investigate groups. We will investigate individuals that are part of groups. So I investigate domestic terrorism as a whole, and this falls, the NVE, the nihilistic violent extremist threat, falls underneath that.
We covered extortion in the past, and I highly recommend everybody watching this now to go back and watch the first episode I did with one of your colleagues, Rex Miller. Now, this is a step farther, because it's not just about the child even harming themselves alone with the explicit pictures, like in extortion. This is the child now being lured to harm others, harm their family members, harm the public.
I know that something that's been unfortunately on the rise is swatting. Some of the things that these children are being told they must do, or they will potentially have those images or videos that they've previously sent to a perpetrator sent out. They have to swat a school or someone else's home or a police department. I mean, there's any number of locations or businesses that the perpetrator will tell the child that they need to call in a fake either active shooter threat or bomb threat. The sending of sexually explicit material is only one way in which these perpetrators are able to recruit these kids. It's not the only way. Some of these kids are desperately wanting to be involved in something. And what that something is, they're trying to figure out. So they will potentially go to such extremes as self-harm, mutilation, harming their pets, trying to recruit others into these types of groups because they want to belong. And this goes into, again, these Gore Groups are part of what we call nihilistic violent extremists, or we'll refer to as NVEs. And what that is, it's not all about the sexual exploitation. It's not about sexual gratification for them. So what they want is they want to institute chaos, and they want violence in society as we know it. They want the downfall of society to happen.
That's terrifying. They're not just after money. These are psychos.
Yeah, these particular individuals have a very deranged sort of thought process. they're unfortunately very talented at recruiting these kids. It's almost like a sales pitch, basically. And they're inviting these kids over to conduct these horrendous acts and commit self-harm on themselves. We've seen too many young girls that have committed these acts of self-harm and done these horrific things to their bodies because they've been manipulated into doing so.
When you say young, give me an age range.
As young as 10, as old as 14. One of the things was that one of the parents happened to notice was some fresh cutting that had been done. And thankfully they were able to recognize that she had in fact been recruited online by a perpetrator. And so they were able to put a stop to that immediately. And she was able to get treatment.
Jonathan, you mentioned NVE, nihilistic violent extremism, and this is one of the words that we heard connected to the Charlie Kirk murder case, that the suspect could have possibly been under those groups. Is this anything that you have heard so far?
Well, unfortunately, that's not a case that I'm privy to. It's not something that I've been assigned personally here in San Antonio. But I will tell you that whenever we are assigned a case, we are looking at all possibilities.
Can you explain how Discord works, and Telegram is another one that I've heard about? Are these playing a role at all in these sort of things?
Sure. We have seen that the online chatting platforms, Discord and Telegram, are being utilized by these perpetrators to bring the minor victims over, and it's giving them an opportunity to expose them to other potential individuals that are also perpetrators. It could expose them to other victims that are already being thrown into these private server rooms that they've created through those particular chat platforms.
So how does the first step of the blackmailing begin?
When the perpetrator has built up enough trust with the particular child, then they convince them, unfortunately, to send some sort of sexually explicit material to the perpetrator. And once they have that, they will use that as a means of what we call sextortion. And so they will take that and say, I now have this material of you, I have this picture, I have this video, whatever the case may be. And they will tell them, if you don't do as I say, I'm going to send this out to your family, to your friends, to your community. They're really smart in terms of them conducting their own sort of background on the individuals that they're talking to. So they will ask these questions and pull information from these kids, and the kids are kids. They're still developing mentally, physically, emotionally. As I mentioned, they want to be a part of something. So they will willingly give personal information to these people that they've never met online, where a lot of these kids think they have these online friends and they've never met in person. So you and I may use the term friend very differently. And so they think that they've built up this relationship with this particular individual, the child does. And then the perpetrator will say, well, I've got your Instagram, I've got your Snapchat, I've looked at your Facebook, and perpetrators have just basically used this to their own sick, twisted advantage. And they will find these children online who have these profiles. They will look at their pictures. They will see, oh, you go to school here because you're wearing this t-shirt or a sweatshirt. I see that someone liked this photo. Oh, I see someone with the same last name like this photo. Oh, that's based on age. That's potentially mom or dad.
And so that's how they connect with them. They find little things too that they find relatable. So I've read things like really popular gaming systems, for examples, like Minecraft, Fortnite, Roblox, which, there's been a major crackdown specifically on Roblox around the world, where some countries are even banning it, because while the actual companies are not necessarily doing anything wrong, but it sounds like the criminals have found a way to get to the kids through those.
You hit the nail on the head there, honestly. We've seen that these platforms themselves, in and of themselves, they are not inherently bad. These perpetrators use those particular gaming platforms and those systems to reach out and find these other young, impressionable individuals who are on there just to play the game. And they will use the chat portion of these particular games, and that's how they will start a conversation. And these children who, again, all they're wanting to do is to play the game that they're logged into, they basically have unfettered access. And so without those proper restrictions and safety measures put in place there within the home, we're seeing that these children are then talking to these perpetrators online. And it could be initially start as an innocent conversation according to the child. Maybe some basic questions are being asked, but it's part of an overall grooming process in order to gain the trust of that particular child.
Who's a part of the Gore Groups? Are these adults? Are these children who are luring other children?
What we've seen up to this point are perpetrators ages ranging from 12 all the way up to as high as 45.
Wow. How does a 12-year-old become a perpetrator and get convinced to do something like that?
These particular individuals tend to be victims at first. And then when they start to get ingrained into these groups, these Gore groups, they basically are being manipulated to the point where they're either willingly now recruiting other individuals, or they see it as a way out. So it is a way for them to get away from the self-harm that they have been conducting on themselves, and then they are able to kind of take that focus and push it onto somebody else.
Can you give me an example where they committed harm to others? Some of these sadistic acts that we were talking about, a family member or even the public? I mean, are we talking about possibly mass shooters? Can they use people to commit mass shootings?
So there have been similarities in terms of what we've seen with these nihilistic violent extremists and the thought process with some of these mass shooters, in that they're wanting the chaos and the violence to happen, right? So those can kind of run parallel. I will say that with them harming other individuals, we have seen children recruit siblings as well, unfortunately, into the fold there. And so they will also bring them in, and then now they are also being victimized, and they're also, creating that chaos and that violence within the home.
So like these siblings are hurting each other and they're taping. I read something about like also them being possibly taped and streamed online. Is this something that you guys are seeing?
So with those online platforms you mentioned, Discord and Telegram, it's not specifically just a chat platform. They both have the ability you can live stream, you can send photos, you can send videos. So you have that capability on both of those platforms.
So have you seen cases where kids are live streaming these sadistic, crazy acts being done, the violent acts?
We have.
But are they also being taped, and are they being circulated online amongst friends and at schools?
Some of these server rooms that are these private server rooms that have been created by the perpetrators, they will sometimes pull in their own friends into these server rooms, and they will also be additional perpetrators there, and they will watch as this particular child is conducting an act of self-harm or a mutilation of a pet or something of that nature. The perpetrators do record some of these instances, and they will share them amongst their own groups. But typically it's not the victim that's going to be recording these types of things. They just, in this particular scenario, they may be the one conducting the act themselves, but they're not the ones recording.
But just to be clear, those perpetrators a lot of times are other kids as well that have been lured in. So it's kids who are the perpetrators luring other kids, committing these violent acts, recording them or watching them live, and then sharing them with others for gratification, to fit in, peer pressure.
Or there's a number of potential thought processes that go behind why they would then go from victim to perpetrator. Some of these individuals, they get so bought in, they get so brainwashed, if you will, because they are, again, mentally still developing. They are still trying to figure out who they are as a person. And they're incredibly impressionable. They've been recruited, they've been brought in, they believe it. They believe what they're involved in is the right thing for them and for others. And so they will get so bought in that they think, I need to do this so I can build some sort of bona fides with these other people that are my friends online, and then I can start to create my own sort of network of individuals that I will bring in. And so they will start recruiting them, bring them in. And we start to get down a very, very dangerous path. These perpetrators are ultimately building what they call a lore book. And a lore book is an online folder, basically, that's going to contain all of these images and videos that they've basically been receiving from their victims. And the worse and the more horrific type of image or video that they have, the more sort of status they get online and with these respective groups. Ultimately, and they have said this, those perpetrators are trying to push the victims to eventually take their own life while live streaming.
Has that happened? Have you had cases where somebody did take their own life?
As an organization, yes. Me personally, I have not.
How young are we talking?
We've seen kids that have been recruited as young as 9.
Recruited?
Yes. They've been recruited as young as 9 all the way up to typically about 17. And then at that point, they age out and become, in the perpetrator's mind, they become an adult. And so they're no longer interested.
How long does that process take, do you see, before the victim ends up trusting a perpetrator? Is that like over a year's period, or is that in a week, a matter of a week, for example, you could see somebody fall victim?
Unfortunately, I've seen it in as little as 3 days, and we've seen it in a couple of weeks. So it's kind of all over the spectrum in terms of the timeline. And what we've also noticed is that these particular children who are being lured and manipulated into these types of groups, they're so hungry to be involved in something. They want to be a part of something. And what that something is, they don't really know, especially at a young age. But they're trying to figure it out. I think that we all probably at some point as a child went through phases where you're trying to find where you fit in.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this, and it's so hard, honestly, to think that like my daughter could fall victim to something like that one day.
We've seen it across all spectrums. So it's unfortunately, it is everywhere because the internet is everywhere. When the child is given unlimited access to the rest of the world, they are now being exposed to all the horrors that are out there in the world, unfortunately, and all the good things as well. So they basically can see and hear anything they want to, or anything that someone potentially exposes them to. And it doesn't matter what that child's upbringing has been up to that point, because it's not a specific demographic, it's not a specific economic or socioeconomic status that we're seeing is more affected than the other. It's everywhere. A big part of that is educating the public and educating the parents. Giving your child unfettered access to the internet is unfortunately the wrong answer.
So what is the right answer? I know you mentioned earlier that you've had the talk with your son, but is that enough? I feel like a lot of parents will probably tell you, look, we've done our best, we've had the talk. What else can we do?
Constant follow-up. It's being relentless, because your child should be the priority. And it's you getting off of your phone or whatever device you have, and it's putting that down, focusing your attention on them. You need to be specific to your child, and you need to figure out what is it that they're doing online? Who are they actually talking to?
So when you're out there talking to schools and kids, what kind of reaction are you getting? And are any kids actually approaching you and opening up about situations that they have been in?
Occasionally had an individual come up and say, I have seen this on here. And luckily, those particular individuals, they told me what they did to get away from it, thankfully. They weren't involved in it. They may have been conversing with someone who was bringing up some of the key points that I talked to them about, things for them to be on the lookout for. And they were able to explain to me, well, it just kind of felt weird. It felt off and wrong. Like I shouldn't be discussing these types of things with this person that I don't really know. I said, that's great. That's perfect. I'm glad that you felt that way. It should feel weird. And I'm glad that you were able to get away from that person and disassociate and get off that platform, get off that server, whatever it was, and then move on. And if it's going back to play the game, go back to play the game. Turn off the chat portion on that game. Don't worry about it. If you want to chat with a friend, call them. You know, and I try and break it down very simple for them.
So what I'm hearing you say is once you're lured in, there's a way out.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. There's no reason for any of these children to think that they can't get away from this. They absolutely can.
What if you've already turned into a perpetrator and you want to get out, but you're scared?
It's not the end of the world. This is something that you can get away from and you can move on, but you've got to do it as soon as possible. And especially if you are being victimized right now, avoid that group completely. Just completely delete the app, delete whatever it is, get away from it. Talk to an adult, talk to someone that you trust, someone that you can confide in. Working with what we would refer to as NCMEC, which is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They have a number of resources that they can access, and you can talk to victim services that way. And again, because even if you were a child who was a victim and became a perpetrator, you can still go to them, you can talk to them, you're basically able to figure out a path away from this and all of those groups and try and get out from under that as best you can.
And as a kid who's online right now playing video games, what warning signs should I be looking for that, ooh, somebody just approached me, this might be one of those things before I fall into it?
Yeah, anybody that you don't know, that you haven't met in person, unfortunately, you cannot trust that particular individual. So if you do not know them from school, if you do not know them from some other extracurricular outside activity, and you've met them physically in person, and you've talked to them, you've done whatever the activity is with them, then, and that maybe at that time you guys both bond over the fact that you both play a similar game, great. You can exchange your, online monikers, your screen names, and then you guys can friend each other through that, but you know who that person is. And so that at that point, then you have a better opportunity to play the game how it was meant to be played, rather than talking to someone that you don't know and having them try and convince you to do something that you really don't want to do.
Stranger danger online.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I was thinking the same thing. Stranger danger. It's, to your point, as a parent, you wouldn't take your kid to a public setting and just let them wander through the crowd and talk to whoever they wanted to and you walk the other way and not pay attention. That's basically what you're doing by allowing the child this access to these platforms without you monitoring it.
Is there like behavioral changes that we can be looking for at home as well in our kids that might indicate that they could be talking to someone they shouldn't and being lured into these specific sadistic acts?
The guardian at home you'd want to look for, and honestly, even like I mentioned before, we talk to school counselors and we talk to teachers because they spend a lot of time with these kids as well. So you need to be on the lookout for isolationism, your child becoming withdrawn from potentially normal activities that they were interested in, and suddenly they're no longer interested in. Here in San Antonio, it can be hot the majority time of the year, and if your child is wearing long sleeves, hoodies, long pants when it's 100 degrees out, you might want to look into that, figure out what's going on there, because that cannot be comfortable. If they start to spend a lot of time just by themselves in the room once they get home and that's all they want to do, if even something as simple as when they go to sit down, if you start to notice some wincing, like there's a pain or something, that could be the sign of a child that is committing acts of self-harm.
And I would think you'd want to be checking your child's body too, like be paying attention to those little things to see.
Exactly.
So I know there's a lot of pressure on parents. As a community as well, is there anything the community, friends, other family members can do?
Oh, of course. And it's still similar in terms of what to look out for with these kids. And some of the kids may not feel comfortable talking to a parent or a guardian about what they've been wrapped up in out of pure embarrassment. But they might have a better relationship with a family member or it could be a school counselor. I've seen that as well. It could be a teacher. And so again, it can't be all on the parents, because of each scenario is going to be different and each relationship is going to be different. And if the child is not comfortable talking about that, again, mostly out of embarrassment, because they're like, oh, I'm going to get in so much trouble because I did these things. The message that I try and drive home when I do talk to some of these kids in the schools and I give a presentation, basically a public service announcement to the kids, is don't worry yourself about that. You need to get away from this, and you need to do what you can to distance yourself from those types of groups online and talk to whoever it is that you need to talk to. And I go through the gamut of people that I just listed, a moment ago.
Jonathan Garman from the FBI, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck with spreading the word. I certainly hope that parents get to watch this, kids get to really see this and take your advice and get out. Get out, kids. There's a way out. There are resources to help you. And for parents, same thing. And watch your kids. Don't be afraid.
Absolutely.
Jonathan, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.